Hello. Welcome to this week's discussion. This week's discussion topic is public history and the American memory. So, the topic that I chose today was the architect of the Capitol. So, I'm going to title this one Architect of the Capitol Preserving Our Nation's Heritage. So, this week was a very good discussion. It allowed me to learn a lot about the actual role of Architect of the Capitol and their role in preserving our nation's history through the preservation of some of our most iconic historic sites and buildings that we have here in the United States. So, throughout this video, we are going to summarize the role of the location, um, where they are located, which is in Washington, D.C., what they do to actually preserve our nation's history through these buildings. And we'll look at two different interpretations of their role, as well as the value that could be had in a field trip to this location. So let's dive right in. The architect of the Capitol is a major organization that has over 2,000 employees that cover over 570 acres of grounds. Their role is to maintain and preserve the nation's most iconic buildings. Buildings like the Supreme Court building, buildings like the Library of Congress, the Thomas Jefferson building, and many other iconic buildings that we will find in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. So these buildings, they do not just represent a functional space in which Congress can be conducted or toured or things like that, but they are also buildings that represent the rich history and values of the United States. Therefore, the role of the architect of the Capitol is vital in making sure that that preservation is happening and that these institutions are preserved. So, when it comes to preservation, how are these buildings preserved? The preservation efforts at the architect of the Capitol involve a delicate balance between conserving the original design and incorporating necessary modern upgrades to keep those spaces functional. They have highly skilled artisans, architects, engineers, and craftspeople that work together to repair and to restore the aging structures, ensuring that they in return remain safe and structurally sound. When it comes to planning a field trip to the architect of the Capitol, it would be a perfect opportunity for students to be able to see firsthand some of the natural wonders of our capital, some of the buildings that define our nation's history. It'll also be a great experience, especially if you teach. Government like how I do, for them to actually see where laws and government is enacted, where laws are created, and lastly, it will definitely allow students to have an immersive experience to actually see and be able to connect with the past and give them that sort of historical significance that they would need. When it comes to the two interpretations of why the preservation that the architects of the Capitol does is so important, the first one is definitely going to be it's the preservation of our national identity. By meticulously caring for these structures, they are going to ensure that for future generations that we can experience and connect to these architectural structures, and that is going to be significant in preserving the collective memory of the American people. The second interpretation is definitely going to be the educational and inspirational significance. By preserving these buildings, we are going to be allowed to visit them for generations to come. Many generations of students will be able to come and explore and be able to connect with these buildings. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait for next week's discussion.